All right. Well, I just thank you very much for allowing me to come in and present. I created this PowerPoint and put some time into this PowerPoint to make sure we could have some time to, be able to look at what I'm going to present. So, um, I'm not going to read all this, but I am going to provide this PowerPoint because I wanted to put everything kind of in one place to help you see all the information that I have. And this is kind of the history in Shrewsbury, running from 1952 when town meeting voted in favor of funding fluoridation equipment to 2015 when it first started, when I sent a letter in requesting the Board of Health to suspend fluoridation, given the recent findings at that time that fluoride in drinking water was neurotoxic and endocrine disrupting. There was a bunch of citizens petitions, and most recently, in 2019, there was a request to notify pregnant women about the latest study on fluoride's link to the reduced IQ in children. And then even more recent than that was the request for the town to provide evidence that swallowing fluoride is safe for pregnant women and their fetus. So that's some of the history. One of the things I wanted to share with you today, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Toxic Substances Control Act lawsuit. It was a lawsuit that's actually been going on since pretty much 2016. And why that's important is I know the way we left it with, trying to get evidence that swallowing fluoride was safe for pregnant women. I believe the board had decided, had voted not to do that. And, that I could go out and kind of query the regulatory bodies myself to try to get that information. Well, where this comes in is there's actually a lawsuit where all of these agencies were under oath and had to and were questioned under oath, and there's a lot of information that we can now say that is in the trial record that is relevant to our discussion. So this is a very important update where in 2016 there was a group of nonprofits like Food and Water Watch and Fluoride Action Network, and I think there was some individuals that petitioned the EPA in 2016 to end the addition of fluoridation chemicals to drinking water due to the fluoride's neurotoxicity. And that's important because TSCA actually allows you to do it for a specific use. So you can say, if this use of the substance, you don't have to ban fluoride everywhere. You just, you pick a use of it and say, does this use pose an unreasonable risk? And if it does, then they're duty bound to, to do something to mitigate that risk. But in 2017, the EPA rejected the petition. And in response, if they reject the petition, you can sue the EPA in federal court. And actually, from 2017 till June 2020, when the 2-week trial was actually held in federal court, there was a lot of depositions and back and forth. The EPA tried to dismiss the trial many times, but they were denied. And so they finally made it to the 2-week trial in June of 2020. So that was the EPA defending in court its position on this. What happened was very interesting and actually I was able to watch, it was via Zoom, so I was able to watch it. And one thing to note was that the judge didn't come out and just vote on either side. So this is very important. The judge didn't say, no, fluoride's obviously safe and effective. There's no questions that need to be asked, and rule in favor of the EPA. Nor did it rule in favor of the petitioners because there was some questions on standing. So what he did was, and I'm going to show some of this information a little later, was he did say that at the time of there was a lot of studies that I've been presenting to you, those NIH funded studies that have happened since the petition in 2016, and those studies, people, you'll see later on that they believe that there was significant evidence and serious evidence in that the judge felt the EPA should consider in its petition that it didn't consider at the time. So he had in November 2020, he had the plaintiffs refile the petition with the EPA, requesting that the EPA reconsider its earlier denial in light of the new information. And so the judge is still yet to make his ruling. He is waiting for the NTP report as well. So you can see here that that they included the pretty much the NIH study funded studies that I was presenting to you is now included in that petition, as well as the revised draft monograph from the National Toxicity Program. He has not yet made, so that I believe that's coming out soon. Another draft report of that. Just checking, everybody. Can everybody still hear me, Carrie?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what's interesting is, I'm not going to go through this slide, but this is a summary slide of the admissions that were captured during the lawsuit. And this is where I think we for the first time, we actually get to, it's a lot different when you have, I'll say, marketing materials or different things, or, you know, you get different statements where, you know, summary statements, but when you actually look at whether they're proclamations of science, such as safe and effective, right? So if we hear a lot of the CDC and others saying that fluoridation is safe and effective, but we really want to understand what data they have to support that. And that's one of the things I had asked before, is to try to get that proof, right? If we're forced to drink fluoride in the water, at least we should have the proof, because really we should be basing our decisions on science. So we wanted to see that science, and here we're going to get it actually right from the CDC's representatives, and these CDC representatives represent the CDC on these subjects in court. So they do represent in its entirety in these. So you're going to see a lot of quotes that I'm going to do. So if we look at the first one, and I'm kind of going to try to walk through this and how it relates to my question around fluoride exposure to susceptible subpopulations, like pregnant women, where they you know, are forced to drink the water through the water supply. So if you look at the EPA, they did admit that fluoride gets into the fetal brain. So this was, if you look in the court records, there is, and they have like different, they have to agree on undisputed facts ahead of time, and the EPA agreed that fluoride passes through the placenta and gets into the fetal brain. That doesn't say it's harmful yet, but I don't know if anybody knew that that is you know, the science-based process is that putting fluoride into the water, and pregnant women drink the fluoride, that fluoride will get into the fetal brain. So that was established. Whether there's other questions on what the risk it poses, but I don't know if anybody knew that that is, the EPA admits that. Then we had the CDC. The CDC, the director of Oral Health Division of the CDC, Casey Hannon, he also admitted that fluoride interferes with the brain. So this is the actual, and it's difficult because with the trial going on, you have to, there's no real way to, it's hard to present the information, but this is actually a snippet from the actual transcript from the deposition. So he was deposed under oath, and the question was, so CDC agrees with NRC that it's apparent that fluoride have the ability to interfere with the functions of the brain and the body by direct and indirect means. Answer, yes. CDC in connection with the Intergovernmental Working Group. So you can see there the CDC admits that the fluoride does have the ability to interfere with the functions of the brain. Also, CDC admitted that fluoride is an endocrine disruptor. So question, okay, so CDC accepts that fluoride is an endocrine disruptor. Answer, yes. I'm sorry, answer. We accept the NRC report as a summary of the hazard. Yes. So they are confirming that as fact. I'm going to go through a couple of agencies here. They did admit that the safe dose for fluoride is not yet known for the brain and thyroid. So when you hear that fluoride is safe and effective, and you try to look at what science that statement is based off of, what science are they using to make that statement? This is when we're talking about the brain, but also the thyroid. Question: so CDC does not have any data on the tolerable upper fluoride intake for neurotoxic effects on children. Answer: right. So they don't have any data. So now, the question is, they don't have, it's not like they have 5 studies, 100 studies, 1 study. They have zero, zero studies, no data on the upper level. So they don't know the safe level. The EPA was also deposed. I think this was in writing where they did it. So the petitioners asked, identify all primary studies that EPA is aware of which demonstrate or support the thyroid safety of fluoridated water. EPA responds that it is not currently aware of any studies that demonstrate or support the absence of detectable adverse effects on the thyroid. That means they have 0 studies that demonstrate the safety of fluoride's effect on the thyroid. The FDA has not conducted or sponsored independent research concerning the risk of neurotoxicity associated with exposure to fluoride, and does not have in its possession any internal scientific evidence concerning this topic. The FDA has no position on this topic, so you can't go to the FDA when it comes to this. That they're just like kind of punting that they're saying we're not responsible, but they don't have any information. So now we kind of laid out that one thing that's part of the safety part, right? They've already admitted that for fact that there is no studies that show the safety of this when it comes to the brain and thyroid. But when you look at the effectiveness part, we have to look at specifically when we're talking, my request where we talk about pregnant women and the fetus, you have to kind of, there's always a risk benefit, right? And right now they're saying that fluoride in the water is good for everybody and it's safe for everybody, right? That would be the only way you could put it in the water. But the CDC admits that there are no benefits from prenatal and neonatal exposure to fluoridated water. So the CDC's conclusion in 2001 is that they had good evidence, high quality evidence to show that fluoride supplements do not provide a benefit for children when given during pregnancy, correct? Answer, yeah, when given to pregnant women. So another way to say that, these are snapshots. There were full depositions, but these are just examples to kind of try to give you. There are a lot more, but can't really pull that all together for you. But this is something that would justify more looking into more statements, such as he also said, we have not found evidence that shows benefit to the child if community water fluoridation or some other form of fluoride is ingested by the mother. This is huge because now you're saying that there is no benefit to the child. So they're ingesting fluoride, and you see that it makes it into the fetal brain. So they're taking all the risk but get no benefit. The EPA, they also had the animals. They also admitted that animal studies point to fluoride risks in humans. Now, Dr. Chris Thayer is the director of EPA's Chemical and Pollution Assessment Division. When she was deposed, question, and based on the animal studies on fluoride neurotoxicity that you have reviewed, you agree that the animal data supports the biological plausibility of fluoride causing neurotoxic effect in humans, correct? Answer, yes. So the EPA is saying that so I'm showing you that these same agencies are telling us that this isn't a far-fetched concept, right? That there's neurotoxic effect. They're admitting that there either is or that there is evidence that shows the plausibility of it. Now this one is a very important one because this woman is Dr. Joyce Donahue. She's the chief scientist on fluoride at the EPA's Office of Water, and she's admitted that the NIH-funded studies that I provided you in my requests recently were well conducted and warrant a reassessment of all existing fluoride standards. That's a huge statement. These studies are not off to the side studies. Their own chief scientist is saying that these studies were well conducted and justify the reassessment of the standard. Currently, Shrewsbury used to have 1.0 parts per million in its water, and recently, a couple of years ago, when it lowered it to 0.7. So those standards she's saying need to be reassessed based on this new evidence, scientific evidence. So question, and you would agree that this study further, and when I say this study, they were talking about I think there were 4 studies of the NIH studies, and this was on one of them. And you would agree that this study further supports the need for reassessment of current safety standards of fluoride in the United States? Answer, yes, it is one of several. So she's actually saying that what is now the standard needs to be reassessed based on the new evidence. Now, I'm getting near the end. I think I have like one more. So at the end of the 2-week trial, something very interesting happened where Judge Chen, who presided over the federal trial, he had heard both sides, but with both sides, he did say that the NIH-funded studies were the best methodology, rigorous, and best available scientific evidence. Now, why did he say that? He's not just saying that because he believes that. He's saying, I'll do the quote, "So much has changed since the petition that was filed, which was in 2016. 2 significant series of studies, respective cohort studies, which were the NIH-funded studies from Mexico and Canada that I provided to you, which everybody agrees is the best methodology." So when he says that, he's saying both sides. The EPA is agreeing, and also the petitioners, right? Plaintiffs. Everybody agrees, which includes the EPA, that these were rigorous studies, and everybody agrees that these studies would be part of the best available scientific evidence. So this is huge because he's saying that the EPA is agreeing to this. And at the time of the petition, those studies weren't available. Hence why he is making sure that they go back and review with these new studies, that he wants the EPA to look at the petition again, and he wants to see their answer, what they're going to do. So he says the EPA, he also kind of reprimanded them. He says the EPA appears to have applied a standard of causation, which from my read of TSCA is not accurate. It's not a proper allocation. It's not the proper standard. Why is that not the proper standard? Because under TSCA, you only have to find an unreasonable risk for them to do something. You can find unreasonable risk without finding causation. So you don't have to find that fluoride causes, neurotoxic damage and lowered IQ and causes that. You just have to find that it poses an unreasonable risk to that. So here from the court records, because there is serious evidence here, there is no doubt that these 2 studies from Canada and Mexico raise serious questions. Now, before I get to, I think it's my last slide. Yeah, before I get to my last slide, I just want to say why it's important is because the judge could have ruled. The judge had the power to make a ruling that would have either probably had the EPA, if he ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, it would have made the EPA they would have been duty bound to eliminate the risk and the risk of fluoride's effect on pregnant women through water. So they would have had to, the most reasonable way to do that would be to end water fluoridation. That's a huge thing. He did not do that. And he could have ruled in favor of the EPA and said, nope, this does not cause an unreasonable risk. He didn't do either of those things. He identified that everybody agreed that the best science was available after the 2016 petition, and that's the science that I've been providing to you. And it's good. Now we're able to see the EPA also saying this is the best science. So that's why the judge has done something unusual, where he's putting it back to the party, saying, we know the serious evidence here.
Well, Brian, we really need to wrap this up very soon.
Okay, one more slide. So the email that I sent you talks about the draft NT National Toxicity Program monograph on the systematic review of fluoride exposure, neurodevelopment, and cognitive health effects. So this is ongoing for several years too. And it actually made it through a second draft. The National Academy of Sciences did a peer review, and it made it through the one peer review. And this is a conclusion in the draft. I want to be clear, this is not the final conclusion yet. This is a conclusion in a draft, but it did make it through peer review, a series of peer review already. And what's important is the underlying statement. However, when considering all the evidence, including studies with exposures to fluoride levels higher than 1.5 milligram per liter in water, which is 1.5 part per million, we fluoridate at 0.7 and used to fluoridate at 1. NTP concludes that fluoride is presumed to be a cognitive neurodevelopment hazard to humans. This conclusion is based on a moderate level of evidence that shows a consistent and robust pattern of findings in human studies across several different populations, demonstrating that higher fluoride exposure, greater than 1.5 milligrams per liter in drinking water, is associated with lower IQ and other cognitive effects in children. And the reason I wanted to put this here is that this is the NTP, and this has already gone through some peer review. So the question of it's if it's a cognitive neurodevelopmental hazard in humans right now, in its draft form, the NTP is including that in draft form, and also making reference to lower IQ and cognitive effects in children. So this is, I just wanted to, hopefully that's resonating with you, that this is not just a, off to the side, I'm giving you the best available information. Actually, the trial is still open because the judge wants to see this NTP monograph included in what they're talking about as well. He wants to see that before he makes his decision. So my final statement will be that the former director of NTP has come out with another researcher who the EPA has used for their lead standards, and said, and published this op-ed that it's time to protect kids developing brains from fluoride. Mounting evidence suggests fluoride may be hampering brain development and reducing kids' IQ. The U.S. needs to rethink the exposure for pregnant women and children. This is by a decade-long head of the NTP, which is under the NIH. And I did forward you the current NIH director's retirement statement on Linda Birnbaum, which praised her of her service and her and the work that she did while she was the director. And so that's why I'm hoping that you also consider that we rethink this exposure to pregnant women and children. I'm actually, see how I shut off presenting. Oh, stop sharing. And so my ask to you is that with all this new information, my plans are to bring this to town meeting. Town meeting is the ones that put it in the water, and it seems that all the boards agree the ones that are would be to take it out. But in the past, the Board of Health has been advisory. Everybody's looking to the Board of Health, right? In the past, so many times, the Board of Health has provided information, of course, from these agencies saying that it's safe and effective and not to worry. So the town meeting members are not concerned because they're hearing that the Board of Health tell them that there's nothing to worry about, right? There's no Board of Selectmen saying there's no evidence of any harm, no studies that show any evidence of any harm. And so what I'm hoping is that, because only town meeting can take it out, is that when you do have that you will consider this, and when you do have your say in this matter, that I hope you address this, because these are now fact and court records, right? So that it's not just it's safe and effective, and to ignore the underlying science that's there, since this is a town issue. And I hope you ask me questions, because I've been doing this for a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions? I guess there aren't any questions. I think at this point in time, I mean, I'm still not in a position to, have a local Board of Health issue a statement or a warning. I think, again, this needs to be handled through the town meeting process, and when that time comes, then we can address it further then.
Chair, I do have a question.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Ms. Fishman has a question.
So Brian, would your intention be to share some of this information publicly before town meeting?
Yeah, well, because throughout this, process for the last 5 or 6 years through the town meeting has been getting advisory information that it's safe and effective, and that there are no studies that show any harm. That I do believe that actually the Board of Health and Board of Selectmen, who are the water commissioners and have some oversight responsibility, because town meeting gave them the money, right, the funds to do this. These boards have gone on record at town meetings and their own board meetings saying that there's no issue, right? And when new information comes up, neither boards are providing the information to town meeting. So town meeting is still under the impression that they're safe and effective and no issue. But you can, as you can see, there's a lot of information here that would be relevant to town meeting members that isn't being told to them. It's not, and fair enough, it's not being told to you, I would assume. I don't know if any of the board members are aware of any of this information. So I don't think the CDC is actively pushing, or EPA is pushing this down so that it gets to Mass Department of Public Health, and they're probably not telling you this information. But in the end, if you're telling the town meeting, then you share the responsibility. So that's why my intention would ideally be that you would take this information, maybe check back with these other boards, other regulatory agencies, whether it be Mass Public Health, etc., and then share this information out, whether it be to the town meeting or to the public, because now you can't say you didn't know, right? And that's why it's important that you get a chance to, either not, set the record straight, but at least update the record, right? So as I don't think town meeting members, if they knew all of this, are going to, how are they going to react if they know that nobody's telling them this? I don't know. So that's kind of my feeling. So I would hope that you would take action before town meeting and provide some information out. But if that's not the case, then I would hope that during town meeting that you acknowledge some of these things as fact, and it's not just the same, science by proclamation that may be coming down from regulatory boards, at different levels of government, right? That it's safe and effective. So that's my intention.
Thank you, Brian.
Welcome.
Dr. Abraham, did you have a question?
Mr. Chair, no further questions. Appreciate the members' informative presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point in time, we're just going to leave it at this, board members.
I second that sentiment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, thank you, Brian, for coming on today.
Great, thanks. Is there any plan for next meeting to discuss by the board? Just a question, so I know if there's any next discussions.
Only if you're planning on submitting a petition for town meeting and you want it to come before us again, we would consider it then.
Okay, so just so I understand this, so that the Board of Health will take no action based on this information unless I bring something forward to the Board of Health again, whether it be a petition or some other request.
That's my position.
Mine too.
Okay.
I intend to look further into this and maybe kind of follow up with the CDC and NIH.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next agenda item.